Hello and welcome to the Designer 2021.1 Tech Brief. My name is Hayley and I'm the Technical Product Manager for Designer. So in this session, I'm going to first of all introduce you to the beta program. I know some of you are completely new to it this time around. I've got a top tip for you for the beta program. I've got 3 highlights of the what's new. And then I'm going to go into the enhancements, so in a bit more detail. So we'll start with the general enhancements, looking at the translators, which is SolidLink, and also the designer framework. Then we'll have a look at reverse engineering, the analysis tools, enhancements to the electrode module, general modeling and surfacing enhancements, and then finally wireframe and annotations. And then we'll be doing plenty of demos interspersed to break up the PowerPoint as we go. So the beta program is active now. This is our release schedule. So beta 1 is now available and beta 2 will be released imminently. It's going to be released next week, in the first half of next week, so watch out for that. We'll release the release candidate at the beginning of October, ready for the official internal release, which we call the RTM, stands for Release to Manufacture, on the 23rd. So that's more of a hard deadline. So you can get involved in the beta program by using the eSupport community forums. The designer reseller group link has changed, the URL has changed, so now we've got an extra /designer, something to be aware of. But our What's New wiki, that's also changed, that's got an extra /designer. We've got all the information here, loads of videos and comprehensive, and the full list of enhancements for 2021.1 in the What's New wiki on the eSupport community forum. So it's a really good resource and useful to be aware of. And there's actually a lot more information in the wiki than I'm going to have time to show you today as well. So be aware, I just pointed out that the URL has changed. The reason for that is because we've now got a designer customer forum. I'll talk about that in a second. So this is the link for the beta program forum. If you go to the designer reseller group, it should be quite easy to find. And you have to make sure that you turn your forum notifications on if you want to get all the latest information. So it's an opt-in. And don't worry, you won't get too spammed. So here's our designer customer forum. And this didn't exist last time I did the tech brief, so it is new as of April this year. And this is why our URL has changed, because the designer customer forum has got the old URL with just the one /designer after this link. So just be wary when you're doing your posts that you're not in the wrong place. And don't worry if you do post in the wrong place, we can always move it and still answer your question. It's not a problem, it won't get lost. I don't think that many customers are aware of it and know how to use it, so please do promote and encourage its use. And this week I advertised the first webinar that we're doing in a whole series. Well, we did a preliminary one back in January this year, but the series is getting going now. So from this month, from next Friday, we're going to have the first one, and then we should have one a month on a different topic. And I've listed the topics in there to just ignite your interest. So I've advertised this on the customer forum and the internal forum. I think it should be useful to anybody who's interested in learning new things in the next generation platform. The designer customer group has its own wiki, which is available for customers, and there's loads of useful information on there. Lots of how-to pages have been put together by support guys, so it could be useful to you, or it could be useful as a reference to send to customers as well. So I'd encourage you to take a look on there and just be aware of it, really. So where can you get the latest release from? That's the beta 1 at the moment of 2021.1. So you can get it from the Designer Reseller group on the beta forum, which I've put all the links to. And you can also get it from the Universal Updater. So to access the beta program in the Universal Updater, you will need to add this access key. This is the unique access key for production software beta programs, so beta software. And when you put that access key in, you should see as my image the latest beta release, and you should get push notifications for those. If you don't know how to add the access key, we've got the instructions written on the eSupport wiki. If you are a metrology person, we've got a separate key for you because you don't give your key out to resellers. So I kept that private and didn't put it in here, and it's not as local information on the forums. So this is my beta program top tip. So if you are running your PC in a foreign language and Designer supports that language, we support 10 foreign languages in Designer as well as English, then your application will install and run in your local PC's language. So during the beta program, while we don't have all of the translated strings, this can show as a missing translation with the markup. And we do this deliberately for development so we can identify missing strings for translation. However, you may not like it in your system because it can look untidy and cluttered. If you want to take some screen grabs and you don't want to draw attention to the fact there's a couple of English strings in there, or if you're just finding it hard to navigate, you can use this environment variable and set it to 0 and then restart your application and all of those markups will disappear. And we should have the language packs integrated in by the RTM. If there's any language translations that are already in there and you think that they are incorrect, do please let us know on the forum. We would like to get the translations as accurate as possible. So this brings me to my highlights for this release. We've got 3 highlights. The first one is Recreate, which is a new reverse engineering application. Secondly, we've got automation in the form of macro recording and playback. And thirdly, we've got our sheet metal CAD, which is dedicated functionality for the Radan teams. So let's take a bit of a closer look at Recreate. So some of you will not have heard about this at all yet. This is a new product that's been created for the metrology side of the business, and it's based off Designer. So it's using the advanced system license, plus the reverse module, plus the analysis module, and also 2D drawing. So those all combined together create the license for Recreate. So it's got its own branding. You can see it looks different from Designer, and that's because it sits with the metrology portfolio. So we've got import modules available as a cost option. Advanced customization is also available, and it runs on CLS just like Designer. And if you want to run this application, you would need to have the Recreate reseller or Recreate customer license. Because it's all one of the same with Designer, we have a shared eSupport community and a shared beta program with Designer. So this is what it looks like. I was just going to try and move that out of the way. So obviously, if you're familiar with Designer, it looks the same. It looks very similar. Moving on to my second highlight is our automation. So we've got macro record and playback. This is available on the advanced customer license only, which is available to all reseller licenses and also customer licenses if they are on maintenance only. If they drop off maintenance, they will lose their customization and scripting ability. If they come back on maintenance, then they'll have it available again and keep all those settings. So macros can capture the user's inputs to commands and saves them as JavaScript. You can then play back the macro and replay those commands. So you can link them together to make an automated workflow. So the full power of modern JavaScript can be used to build a highly customized automation environment. We recommend that you use Visual Studio Code for macro editing and debugging. And we do have a dedicated session on macros and scripting, which is going to be next Friday, the 18th. And you can register from the link in my PowerPoint, or there's a link to it on the forum as well, the beta program. Okay, so that takes me to my first demo. So I'm going to go over to Designer. I'm running a prelim beta 2, but we'll get that out to you guys by hopefully Monday. And what I can do is go to my Windows, Macro Explorer, and here I've got a list of my macros. So I can select one that I want to play and then play it for you guys. After a few seconds, we can see my family of parts macro has been played. Get a little toast notification to say that the replay is finished. And I'll just explain to you how we've managed to do that. If I pull up my script folder here, okay, that's what this is pointing to. You can see all of my JavaScript files as they're shown in my Macro Explorer. And at the end here, I've got these two, which is the family of parts. So if I open up the family of parts CSV and also the JS file, and I'm using that Visual Studio Code, I can show you what's going on here. So in our JavaScript file, we are pointing to look at that CSV file. And in this CSV file, we've defined a bunch of variables. So if we come down here and have a look, here we have our constant X, Y, Z, and we've got a movement of 250 mils in the X. And that's so our parts aren't all sat on top of one another. As you saw, they were all spaced out. I'm obviously not going to talk through the entire JavaScript file, but we'll have a look here. We're extracting these variables from the CSV. Here we've got our length, width, and height on rows 5, 6, and 7. Okay, so we can see that in our spreadsheet. And then we've got 4 parts defined with sets of parameters. So as we go down, we've got 2 radii set on 8 and 9. These are our blends. Got an offset, and so on and so on. And at the end, on row 16, we've got our blend color. So then we have a look here, and we're executing the command, and we start with create box. So that is our cuboid command. And then literally, we're using our length, width, and height as you would in the command, and it would be inputting those numbers, or in this case, we're just recalling them from the spreadsheet. So we're running through here and populating all of these commands, and then we've programmed it to go 4 times to pull all 4 parts out. So let's just go back to Designer. I'll delete these guys, and we can run it again. So you can either select it and hit play, or you can double click and then it will play directly. Okay, so that's just to ignite your interest and give you a little flavor of our scripting capabilities. But please do attend the tech brief next Friday, which has more dedicated information on that. Okay, so back to the presentation. I do have a question, and the question is this a paid option? So macros and scripting comes on the advanced customization license. The advanced customization license is a zero cost option license and is available to customers on maintenance. I've got another question, and is the macro recording functionality available in Recreate? Yes, it is. You have got the advanced customization license available as well. Okay, so my third highlight is sheet metal CAD. We've got another separate tech brief because obviously we can't put everything into one. We'd be here all night. On the following Friday, so at the end of September, dedicated to sheet metal CAD. So if you've got any interest in sheet metal, I encourage you to go. This tech brief is going to cover all the functionality from the last release, 2021.0, and this release to be a more complete overview of the sheet metal functionality. So I just pulled out 4 highlights from this release. So the first one is CenterCam for nesting. So we can now send part names and instances to Radan Traditional. We can send to RadQuote for quoting purposes. We've now got the ability to create circular corner reliefs. And also we now support conical bends. Again, there's more information, more detail about other functionality available on the What's New wiki on the forums. Okay, so now I am moving on to the general enhancements to the Designer product. Starting with the translators. So our translators library is SolidLink. Our component, is called SolidLink. And we use 2 different libraries, import libraries, Spatial and DataKit. We can now select the translator library we want to use from the graphical user interface. So you go to your files, settings and options, and you can see here you can pick between default, which is Spatial, which has always been the default, alternative, which is DataKit, and also user defined, which has always been there. So we no longer have to run a command file in order to change. Also, it's much easier to check which library you are currently importing with if you couldn't remember. So that's a really nice enhancement. Another really good one is this feedback when we import elements that have problems. So the first one is we get a log file to display missing entities. We actually had something crop up on the forum this week, and I was able to use the latest version of SolidLink. Dear, I said a bad word. SolidLink and and Designer. And it's really easy to see that if you're importing an assembly file and it's referencing other bodies which you don't have, then of course we're not going to ever be able to open it. It's not a problem we can fix. We have to go back to the supplier of that file. So this is very useful information. We also have a log file to display problems when the versioning is bad. So before we would just have an unsupported file message. Now we are told exactly the file type and version, and we can compare and understand why that file might not have been imported. So this sort of feedback is just so useful for saving a lot of time when importing and you have loads of importing problems. Another nice enhancement is we can replace the color palette on import. So you don't need to do a manual refresh, and it makes picking so much easier as you're working on that file. Moving on to the more designer framework enhancements. We've improved the behavior when an operation fails. So it's quite subtle in this slide, but if an operation's not valid, you can no longer accept the command. So on the image on the left, the command is okay and is fine to run. We don't have the warning message, and the tick is blue, and you can right-click to accept. On the right, we've got a problem. The command isn't valid. There's some sort of error, and you cannot blue tick. It is grayed out, and you can't right-click to accept. So it gives you the possibility to fix the problem rather than simply closing and you wondering what has happened. So the right click and blue tick are blocked. However, of course, you can still use the escape key to exit the command. Have you ever gone into a command and accidentally selected the wrong elements? I'm sure some of you have. I certainly have. So now we have the option to completely reset any selections to start it afresh. So what it does is doesn't reset the defaults, but it's resetting the picking. So it's like you've closed and reopened the command without needing to do so. And you can access it from the burger button at the top right of every command. The right-click menu has been enhanced. We can now add any number of commands to the right-click menu. Before there was a limit of 8. So we've removed that limitation. And you can also configure how you want to display your right-click menu. We now have the option to auto-hide labels, and it's available in the user settings. So the labels, if you check this option, the labels will display on focus only. So that means if your cursor is hovering over one of the graphic sliders, one of the green graphic sliders, so you can see from this image, it can be quite cluttered and you get a lot of overlapping labels, which maybe aren't very helpful. Whereas on the right, as we move the cursor over one of the sliders, we can see the label and input the values on focus. We've got more control over the visibility of locked elements. We always were able to show them in transparent or not. Now we've got control over that transparency. So how transparent do you want them to be? It's down to you. Okay, so I'll go back over to Designer. We'll just close these guys down, actually, the ones I don't need. I'll try to anyway. And I will open my second model. Okay, so I'm just going to drag and drop this file into Designer. I want to make sure I open it. Here we get the import dialog. You can see we get the option to replace the color palette if we wanted to. We'll just accept that. And we've got our log file saying the reason why we have an empty Designer file is because it's referencing components which do not exist. That's super useful feedback. So our next one is an unsupported version. So if I open this, Okay, we get the error message that we've got an unsupported version, which we always had. But we also have a log file now, and it tells us the information we need. So we can see that it's a Solid Edge file, v12. Okay, so that's quite an old version. So in Designer, if we wanted to just check that, just so you know where to look, you can obviously go to the help for our embedded help. We can search for Solid Link or translators, and we can have a look at the file formats which are supported. If I just widen that a bit, I can see what's going on. Oh, a bit more. Solid Edge, you can see it's all supported. If you look at the top, that's the header. And these are the extensions, and we support from version 18 to Solid Edge 2020. So this is why that file is not opening. Okay, so it's too old. It's really useful to have that feedback information. Okay, next we'll have a look at the translators library and where to find it. So if we go to File, Settings, Options. This is where you can change your user language, by the way, if you do want to work in English. These are all the foreign languages. And here we've also added the translators library, so you can select. So we tell you, and it's on the forum as well, that Spatial is good for bringing in high quality geometry. In general, DataKit is very, very good for PMI, and you can also add customs in there as well if you provide your own DLL. So we'll have a look at what happens when the operation fails. So here's my part, and I'm going to run a blend command. So I'm going to choose the option tangent edges. I'm going to select that edge and just do a right click, because then it goes in here and selects all those edges and highlights them in red. Does it in 2 clicks. Okay, so you can see the operation is not possible. I can't right click, it doesn't do anything, keeps the command open. And you can see that we can no longer accept the blue tick. So it's just that bit more feedback to the user. So obviously 0 is a bad blend value, but if we do a blend value of 1 as well, it's also bad. 2. And as soon as we go to 3, we get our preview, and we are now able, I could right click, and I could also apply using the blue tick. So we can actually make it work, you see, on the 1s and 2s, but you just need to change some of the settings. So if I change my overflow settings to retained surfaces, you can see that I get a nice small blend value in there, and I can right click to accept that. So it's giving us the opportunity there to make a valid operation rather than simply closing the command. Okay, so we'll have a look at our right-click menu. So this is our default right-click menu. So all you have to do to get this up is literally right-click somewhere in the graphics window, okay? And then here we have our list of last used commands. Those are the ones I've just used. And here we can configure our right-click menu. So here we can now add as many commands as we like. Literally just going to add any of these, really, just to make it quick. You can obviously add the same one multiple times if you so desire. And let's just add all of these. All right, so as soon as you get too many in here, you can use the slider. You can move things up and down. We can delete ones. We can delete them all. Let's have a look at that. So the right-click menu, now you can see we've got all of those commands I just added. count per row by default is 10. However, you can actually set it to whatever you want. So if we say 3, we can change that, and it's looking like this now. Right, let's bring in my next model. So I'm going to show you the auto hide label option. So let's use the blend command again because it's nice and easy. I can, let's say I want to select things like that. Right, I've selected all of the wrong things, and I've done that deliberately because I want to show you, as well as being able to reset selection from here, which is great to do if there's just one pick. If there's multiple picks, I don't have it in this command, but we can come in here and just say reset selections. Okay, and it's like we've rerun that command. So rather than selecting all of those, I'm going to turn my visible elements on. And I'm just going to window select these guys. Okay, and do a radius. Let's set to default. So we'll set that to something like 3, sure. I've only got one label showing at the minute. If I go to my advanced options and turn setback on, here you can see I get all sorts of labels, and it's all right when I zoom in, or at least it's better, but it's quite chaotic and cluttered when I zoom out. So obviously I can come in here and make any changes. I can input the values and whatnot. What I think it's best to do in this instance is go to our user settings, user interface, general settings, and here we've got that option. See if I can zoom in. Sometimes get funky things happening on WebEx. Graphic slider, labels, auto hide. Hopefully you can see that. So you can check that box. Zoom out, and I'll run my blend command. Just going to do exactly the same thing. Go to my advanced and add the setback. And you can see that we don't get all of those horrible labels. We can obviously still come in here and set these parameters to be what we want them to be, or drag them around dynamically and snap to anything we want. Or we can change the overall radius. And we can do this like so. The other thing I wanted to show you was the locked elements. So inside that user setting panel again, turn that off. If you go to the graphics tab, miscellaneous, and here we've got our locked elements different style. So this is on by default. This is the default setting. So here what we've got is an electrode. So electrodes are locked elements. So if I run the electrode manager, you'll see we've got our electrode, and we can run a simulation just to prove that it is an element, an electrode, and that's why it's locked and shown in this transparent color, transparent shading. So if I go to, for example, the move face command and try to select it, I've selected something else there. Yeah, we can't select those guys. We get the little lock icon, I don't know if you can see that, which shows you that it's locked. So that's the feedback we have. So from our settings, we can control the transparency now of those locked elements. I'm going to have it a lot less transparent, so they're just more visible, or turn it off completely, whatever you fancy, whatever works for you. Oh, I'm just trying to get rid of this panel. All right, so I'm going to go back to my presentation and move on to our reverse engineering enhancements. So it's a bit more exciting. So we had a question on one of those demos, so I'll just answer it now as we go, actually. It's easier while it's fresh in my mind. It would be nice if there was a hint for why the command cannot be applied. So often when we have operation not possible shown, it's a parasolid error, and the error message doesn't actually make any sense anyway. So operation not possible is often the best thing we can actually show. It doesn't always say why in the parasolid feedback. So we have investigated that before. So what's new reverse engineering? So I've split it into 3 sections. So this section is general CAD for reverse. What I mean by general CAD is it isn't assigned to the reverse module. So it's not limited to the reverse module. You don't have to pay for the reverse module. It just fits very well with the reverse functionality. So we have this new command, automatic trim. I've tried to put the new icons for all the commands as well so you can identify them. It's available on the standard system license, and it automatically trims intersecting faces and surfaces into either solids if they're completely watertight, or sewn sheet bodies if there's small gaps. That's a really nice enhancement. We have the repoint curves option. This is available in 2 areas. So it's in the wireframe command reprocess. So that's available on the Essential license. And it's also available from the sections command as an option. If you automatically select a mesh, it's going to automatically try to populate the repoint option. And the reason for this is if you create a section true to the mesh and then try to extrude it, you see you've got so many control points going through that mesh, you get really bad quality surfaces, which is not useful. So the repoint means we can create nice, smooth lofted surfaces or extruded surfaces like we see in the second image here. Another addition to the section command is a new panel which is called arcs and segments. So this fits arcs and segments to our sections. Segments being straight lines, so arcs and straight lines to our sections. Then the output is a profile, and this profile can then be read by one of the brand new reverse commands, or used for lofting or extruding, just as the repoint option. So that was all the general CAD. This is brand new reverse engineering functionality allocated and licensed to the reverse module. So leading on from my previous slide, the output from the arcs and lines sections command is then read by this new body from section, and it gives us the opportunity to tidy up the sections and then to create nice extruded bodies. We have a new command where we can extract analytical bodies directly from a point cloud, so you don't need to create a mesh first. So at the moment, we can pull out planes, cylinders, and spheres directly from a point cloud. Previously, we had the option to merge clouds. Now we also have the option to merge meshes. We can also remove unwanted small fragments of mesh, just like when you sew sheets in or sew bodies together, sew surfaces together in the sew sheets command. We can now extract and create spheres directly from the mesh, and the same for cone features. So we introduced reverse engineering functionality at the last release, about April this year. So these next few enhancements are enhancements to those existing functionalities. So they're not completely new commands, just refinements. So our mesh to surface command is now a really powerful command. It's got a new user interface, which makes it much easier to use. So we've added loads of new functionality to it. So this user interface is going to make it easy to understand and pick the correct elements in order to get the correct result. So we can now create surfaces using a mesh and also wireframe boundaries. In addition to that, we have improved the default parameters. The adapt to element command has now absorbed the functionality from the separate adapter circle. So that adapter circle has been removed, and we've also added lots of new functionality. So you can adapt to wireframe elements as before. You can also adapt to circles and extract circle elements, similar to before, but all in one command. And we've also added the ability to extract or adapt to square slots, round slots, and n-sided polygons, and also modify the X, Y, Z positions of those. We have a new option I've listed the commands here, in all of the extracting elements from mesh or cloud commands, which automatically snaps the element to an axis if it is within the certain tolerance. So the default is 1, but you can increase that depending how off you think your elements are. So it was hard to show in this image, but this one is not completely square to the z-axis in this in the screen grab while this is off. And then when we turn this on, this option, you can see that's now straight up and down the Z. And it just reduces the number of picks because you don't have to choose to select a reference element every time. It's much quicker to create the correct geometry. We have a few enhancements to the alignment command. The biggest one being align by points. We've made it a lot more user-friendly. We've now got the option to split the screen and also to remove the points. So this means you can see the elements independently of one another, move them around independently, makes it much, much easier to select the first point on the target and the second point on the destination element. And then a small enhancement is the improvements to the inertia method. We have just made the X and Y inversion options available. I'm not going to demo that today, but there is more detail on that on the forums if you're interested. We've improved the default parameters in the one-click mesh and also the cloud to mesh, refine mesh, and smooth mesh commands. So the one-click mesh is the one command which combines all those other 3 commands, plus a bit more, to give a lot better results when doing our meshing and also refining to a cloud. We've also improved the one-click mesh command in general, so it has got absolute full control like the individual commands and gets much better results. And I'm really enjoying using the one-click mesh command now, whereas before my preference was the 3 individual ones. The enhancements to the plane from mesh are just so we can get better results, really. So if you pick by triangles and you've got quite a smoothed mesh, even in this example here on the left, I've only got the angular deviation set to 1. We're picking all the triangles that go down this face here. I'm not sure how well you can see that. I'll show you in the demo. And if we discard 5% of the triangles, it means we're only focusing on the planar face or the face that we're interested in, and we get a much better surface result as a result of that. So no extra clicking is really needed, and it's just useful to know about this 5%. Obviously, to turn it off, you just set it to 0. Fill gaps has been enhanced to reduce the number of mouse clicks. and also make it a lot easier to fill multiple gaps simultaneously. You can use the window selection option now. So this command in general is just a lot faster to use and a lot more intuitive. And in the cylinder from mesh command, we can now automatically create solids, not just surface cylinders. So that's quicker if you're then subtracting elements from a mesh using the Boolean tools. Okay, so we'll go back over to Designer and have a look at all of those nice reverse engineering enhancements. So, go back a level. And all these parts are going to be made available to you. I'll put them all in the pack so you can have a go. So we'll open our first part. All right, and what we've got here is our triangle mesh. We can always check what we've got by using our dynamic query from the bottom. Try and zoom, dynamic query, there he is. So if we hover over the mesh, oh, there we go, we get told that we've got about 750,000 triangles on there. It's not a small amount. So we've already got some surfaces created. What I'm going to do is first of all show you the enhancement to the plane from mesh. So on the reverse tab, you can use the plane from mesh. I'll use the by triangles option, and these are all the default settings, by the way. I reset to default before this presentation. So of course you can select by window selecting, but using angular deviation, we've got 0.1, we can hover over, we get the feedback in blue of what's going to be picked. And I'll just increase that to 1, which is still quite a low number. And here, if we hover over, we can see all those triangles that are being selected. So if I select those triangles there, here we've got the 5% on. We've got quite a nice, set the extension distance. We've got quite a nice plane created that looks like it's quite accurate to that triangle mesh. So if I set that to 0, which is what it would have been before, it's doing that plane in the average between all of those triangles selected. So you can see that with that setting on, that's new, we get a much better result. So what I'm also going to show you is this snap to work plane axis. It's going to be subtle, so watch it. Hopefully you'll be able to see there is an ever so slight difference to my surface that's created when I select that option. Because what we're doing is snapping it so it's square with our active work plane. So when I do my next set, so I'll just shift select these two broken portions of mesh, it should become more obvious. So with the snapping to the axis on, you can see that we've got more surface shown at the top and more triangles shown at the bottom. But remember, we're just using the mesh as a guide, and we'd rather create a part that is correct and manufacturable. So I'm just going to keep that on and create my last planar surface. Yep, so that's on. So in the previous version, you would have to select a reference direction or plane. So the fact that you don't need to do that anymore is really nice. Makes it a lot easier to use. So if I hide the mesh, what I've got is all of these intersecting planes. And so I'm going to use the new automatic trim, which is our new CAD command. I can select that and window select all of my surfaces. And you can see that we've got this trimming. If you can see, we've got transparent faces shown. We can switch to invisible, and we can have a quick look at the part. We can see we've got no problem areas there, so we could just accept that because all of our planes were fully intersecting. We've gone from a bunch of surfaces to a single solid model super quick time. So that's a really nice enhancement. Before you would have to use the trim face and trim each of those together and then sew all the sheets into a single body. Now, obviously, this was a really nice, simple example to show it. So I've got a slightly more realistic example next. All right, so here I've got this, what I received here was actually the point cloud of a blade, and I've meshed it inside Designer. Then what I've done is use the plane from mesh command and extracted all of these planes. So I've got loads of nice big intersections, and from here it looks okay. So I'm going to use my automatic trim command and window select all of my surfaces, planar surfaces, and this is the result that we've got. So it doesn't look quite as tidy. We'll go to invisible as before. These regions all look fine. Sometimes it can be useful to hide the mesh. Sometimes it's useful to see the mesh as a guide. You can see we've got a gap surface here. So I'm going to show you how we can fix that. So we have the option to show all of them or do it one by one. So if I switch to one by one mode, I can then choose the face to display. So we can see that that one's a problem because our laminar edges are highlighted in this color here. Don't know if that makes it more obvious. Change color. So our laminar edges or open edges are highlighted here. So I'm going to select a face to display, and then I can choose to sort out the trimming. So as I hover over, I can choose to remove, or if I've removed it, I can click to add. So I want to keep this bit here, but I want to remove that little fraction there. So once you've fixed any of the problem faces, you could toggle between them or do next solution, or we can come in and do a face to display and pick the problem face. So let's pick that face. I know that I want to remove that bit there, but I'm going to want to also trim all of these bits here. So I can't do that at the moment. What I would need to do is go to my dialog and turn on this extend trim option. So when I do this, all of those intersections are extended to the end, and I can remove all of these outer pieces and just leave the region that I'm interested in. So we can move on to the next face, or we can pick another face. And as I go around, you can see this is why we had that strange trimming problem. It's because we had a gap in there. So if I go to transparent now, then I'll be able to pick this face that is completely missing from this one side. So let's pick that face. All of my trimming is not extending here. So I need to turn on that extend trim again. And then I know, but maybe you don't know, so I'll show you with the mesh on. Okay, so to see the tray, all I'm doing is using this hide blue arrow here, selecting anything I want in the tree, and then literally just hovering over the dialog docked panel, it pops back out again. So it's quite easy to use. I can come round here and using that mesh now as a guide, I can remove, or if I remove too many, I can add in extra bits that I need to. So that looks pretty nice. We'll go next. And then maybe we just want to see all of them. We go to invisible. Let's hide the mesh. see what that looks like. So you can see we've got these individual faces extended out on this face, and we've got that laminar edges shown in green, but we can't really fill that. We can't extend that surface in here. So I'm just going to accept the command, and you'll see, where is he? That we've got this open sheet body. But it's all sewn together, so I can use the close to solid command to select that, and it's just healed it for me. I've got a label that says that body is closed, and now that's all fine. So if your surfaces aren't completely intersecting, you can use the command more involved and fix it, and it's still quicker than doing all of those individual trims. So the next thing I'm going to do is show you the repointing options. So I'll bring back my mesh, and I'm going to run the section command. And you'll see I'm working all the time from the reverse ribbon. So I can select my mesh. I'm going to select a cut point and a plane normal, which is Z. And I'm going to come in here actually and select another cut point. So we've got two. I'm not sure why that's shown in red. See if I can change it. There we go. All right, so we've got these two blue curves created here. Yeah, hopefully you can see that. And because I selected a mesh, zoom in over here, the repoint option, and this repoint distance is the default, is automatically selected. So I'm going to keep that on, and that's because in general you'll probably want to have the repoint on to create good quality solids and surfaces from them. Good quality curves make good quality surfaces. So I'm going to run the command again, and we'll do a cut point here. Very similar, and this time I'm just going to turn that option off so you can see what the result is. We turn the repoint off, the tolerancing is then grayed out, and we can accept that command. So if I now create a lofted surface through these two curves, go to my surfacing tab and use my auto constrained. It's our powerful surfacing command. I'm going to use this curve here and this curve, not that one. This curve here. Zoom in, and I'll get it. And we've created this surface here. Yeah, through those two curves. If we hide the mesh, you can see it's a nice quality surface. Let's compare it to what happens when we do a extrusion, for example, on one of these curves here. So if we go to our extrude command, select this curve, just drag it out, we can see immediately that it doesn't look as good. It's because this has got hundreds of control points, because every single triangle in the mesh has created a control point on that curve. So the automatic repointing is in the section command. However, go back to my reverse tab, you can do it manually if you use the repoint option. So let's bring that mesh back. So the repoint option, sorry, inside the reprocess command. So if we go under the sections tab, command on our ribbon, we have the reprocess command. So it lives here on the reverse tab. It also lives on the wireframe tab, okay, here on the main ribbon. And we have this new option here to repoint. So we can select that curve and choose the repoint option. And if we have a look at this information, you can see I've gone from almost 300 control points to 22. That's a big difference. So if we apply that, what I can then do is, let's just delete that surface. Oops. I delete the wrong thing, sorry. I'm going to use the auto-constrained, and this time I will just control select the repointed. Now all of them are repointed, and we get a good quality surface that runs through the mesh, all of those curves. Okay, so that was really demonstrating the more complex trimming using the auto trim, and also the two areas where you can access the repoint curves function. So those are really nice, really nice enhancements to the reverse set of commands. But that repointing is available to anybody. Okay, so next we're looking at creating bodies directly from a point cloud. So what I've got here is a point cloud. I've changed the default thickness of the point, so you can do that if you want in edit properties. By default, we color the point clouds in thick because it makes them nicely shaded and easy to see. But for the purposes of this demo, I've set them just to thin, so you can see that I am working with a cloud. Okay, and obviously we could always use that dynamic query to tell us how many points are in that cloud. How many have we got? 7 million, more than 7 million points. Okay, so on my reverse tab, I'm going to run the bodies from cloud command. And if you're familiar with creating elements from a mesh, then this is all going to look very similar to you. Okay, so we've got the multiple options, however, in one command. So we've got the option for planes, cylinders, and spheres. Let's start with planes. We have to select a seed point, so I can select a single point. And a surface has been created. So let's just put a surface extension on there of 5, okay, because it makes it easier to see. All right, and slightly different from the plane for meshes, in this one, we can actually select multiple seed points for the plane. Because obviously we can't select regions of triangles, but we do sometimes want to connect up areas of point clouds which are not actually linked in the model. And yeah, we've got our snapping to axis, so we can do that on the mesh and on the cloud. So we can extract another plane. Let's do this one here. Okay, we can extract cylinders. Let's go in here. We'll snap that one to the axis, and then when we come and do the next one, we can make it concentric to this guy. I'm making sure when I'm picking the points that I'm trying not to select points behind. So I'll go back in. And here I'm going to say this is a reference surface, and we can make that guy concentric and work our way up the model like so. And make that guy concentric to this one, just so they've all got the same center point. Pull another one out. And remember, you are selecting individual points, so you could select one rogue point and get something that doesn't quite work, but often it looks to be giving a good result. So finally, I'll just demonstrate the sphere from cloud, and there we have it. And of course, I didn't show this, but of course we can change the values as well as we're creating them, so we can set the diameters and the radii as we go. So yeah, if you don't want to create your mesh, you can work directly from the cloud. I personally like working on mesh, so in the next example, I've got a mesh, and just want to quickly show you our new sphere and cone from mesh commands. So here's our sphere from mesh, so you can do the seed point. I'm using the same model, obviously using a mesh. You can change the diameter. We can select by triangles instead if we wanted to. We can also create a cone from mesh. So this one is slightly different, so it's not using seed points or by triangles. However, you can select base points. Just noticed something there. So you have to select at least 3 based points and then a top point, and then you get your preview. So just like with all the other commands, you can set a radius, change the values. I think that's 0, so it's a complete cone. You could snap that to an axis if you wanted. And in this one, I've just pulled out a cylinder already. So we can snap to this to create our base points. So we go 1, 2, we could do 3, or we could do 4 if we wanted to. I'll just right click to accept, and then we have to select our top points. So we could do more than 1 at the top there, and then we can make any changes. Make that bigger or smaller. We can add extension distances on. Yeah, so we just have a more complete set of tools available to you now. I'm just going to get rid of those. Get rid of those, sorry. I'll get rid of these elements I just created. Keep that mesh, and I will demonstrate the arcs and segments from the section command and then how it feeds into the body from section. So yeah, I'm going to run my section command again, and we can choose our part. I'm going to select a cut point to be somewhere just on the front here below this hole. Cut plane normal is going to be the Z axis. Right click to accept. We get it running through our part. You probably can't see that, so I can't even see it. We can do wireframe always visible. The wireframe shows through the mesh. And at the moment, we've got the repoint on because that's the default. However, we can turn on this arcs and segments. So let me check that. It opens up this panel. You can see the repoint and all the other bits are grayed out apart from wireframe always visible. Now you can hopefully see a little bit more clearly because we've got the arcs shown in green and the straight lines or segments shown in blue. We've got some different parameters here. We can change to keep the tangency. You can see because we've got this 3D surface here on this model, we get some arcs as well as segments in there. We can change the max radius. So at the moment we've got whole circles here. So if I set that to be a small value, let's say 5, you can see how now we're limiting that radius to 5. So we've got segments in between all of our arcs. So that's actually not a good result. So let's just set it back to the default values to be 100, and then I'll keep tangency on. So we get some feedback as well in our feedback box telling us that a profile is created. with the displayed arcs and segments. So when we accept and create that profile, let's hide the mesh. It is just one profile, okay? And that is what is useful to us. It just is made up of the arcs and segments. So we can go into our body from section command. This is a brand new reverse engineering command. We select the profile we want to edit. And here we've got, oh, I think maybe I kept my radius to be really small. Oops. I think I can work with it, so never mind. So what I can do here, we've got these different options: unify into a segment, unify into an arc, extend to element, arc to segment, arc to circle. So let me just think about what I want to do. I would like to just consolidate all those into one element. So if I say unify into segment, I can select this portion. So the blue is the segment or the straight line. We've got next solution, and you can see we've removed all of those fragmented pieces, and right click to accept. If I zoom into this corner, I don't know if you can see that. What I want to do is remove this. We've got two little arcs in there. What I really want to do is just make that a nice sharp corner. So we can say extend to element. We can extend this segment to this segment, and we get a nice sharp corner. Okay, so we can right click to accept. And I'm just going to do that in all four of my corners, get those nice sharp corners, because we can add blends in later. That's fine. We've got this little feature which works quite similar. We'd rather work with a nice straight sharp corner rather than with some bad angles going on there. So what I need to do here is probably unify into one segment, that guy and that guy, and then I can extend this to element. So we're tidying up our profile. So this is where I should have had a nice green arc, single arc, if I had not set my maximum radius to 5. So let's hope I've got enough information on there to do a unify into arc. So let's go from this guy here to this guy here. So it's unified all of these sections into one arc. The reason I picked those were they were just the biggest sections, so I thought they would have the most data. So let's select these guys. And if you don't get the right solution, you can always use the next solution, like so. And also, if you don't like some of these, you can extend to element. So if you say you're happy with that arc now, we can say extend to element. We can go, and we've got a nice sharp corner there, and we've removed all of that other garbage. Same for here. Nice sharp corner. We don't need to worry about all those fragmented pieces. And the same over here, we get that nice sharp corner. And even though I didn't start with what I expected to, I've been able to get a good result. So now I can say I want to do none of those editing options. I could extrude as a body. We can type in a value here. That's too big. Let's go 90. Yeah. And we can bring back our mesh and make sure we get the right height in there. Probably want to add a bit of distance at the bottom as well. And we've very quickly been able to create a very nice solid body. And then you could start removing any features from this body. So it's a different approach if you don't want to start fitting surfaces to mesh regions, or if you only have a small portion of the mesh which is good enough quality to do so. So this is a really nice, powerful new command. next we're looking at the alignment command. So this is a really big enhancement too, actually. So what I've got here is a scanned motorbike yoke. We scanned one side of it, flipped it over and scanned the other side. So they came in like this. They were point clouds, but I've meshed them. So I want to pick an element to align and a destination or target element. And then I can skip the seed face because I don't have one in this instance. And by default, we use the inertia method. Okay, so that's actually done a pretty good job of doing this alignment. However, that wasn't the purpose of this demo. I wanted to show you the by points alignment. So we have this new panel. Before we could select points, but we've got a better and bigger pick box, and we also have the option to split the window. That is on by default. So as soon as you go into the alignment points, that's when your window is split. And I can now move them around independently. So I can still see both elements, but it makes it a lot easier for me to align things up and select key points. So for example, the underneath of this part is obviously the top of this one here. So I can come in and select my first point. So I have to select one point on my point to align. Oh, have I done it the wrong way around? And 1 point over here. Let's hope I've done it right. If I flip this over, let's see, we'll do the same on this side. I'm just trying to select some similar features, okay. So I can come in here, we can select a point on there and a point on there. So we have to have minimum of 3. So let's see what else I can do. I always do different ones every time. So it makes it more exciting this way. So now I've got 3. I'm going to accept that, wait for the command to do its worst, and you can see it's given us actually a really nice result. So if you weren't happy with any of those points, let's say we didn't like the first 2, we could go in there and delete. And it's not obviously able to do it with 2 points. You've got to have 3 or more. So I could go back in and pick another point. So let's just pick something. Let's pick that one there. Okay, so I'll pick this guy here and that guy there, and right click. Let the command do all the hard work. All right, and there we have it. There's our alignment by 3 points. I tell you what, that is a lot easier to do with that split screen option. So the next thing I wanted to show you was merging meshes. So before we were able to merge clouds, now we can do it with meshes as well. So if I select that command, we can say select the first element, select the second. Command will do all the hard work for me. We get the feedback. It looks like we've got some fragmented bits of mesh, which is quite common. So we have this option here to remove small meshes, and you can choose how many you want to ignore. So anything with fewer than 50 triangles is going to be ignored, and that means I'm left with 1 mesh at the end. So when I accept and close that command, that's all I've got, 1 mesh. I don't need to delete any fragmented pieces. So that was the enhancements to the alignment by 3 points, and that nice split screen option, and also that brand new merge mesh command. Next, we've got our mesh to surface. Okay, so if I run my mesh to surface command, we've got a new user interface and new default settings, so it should give you better results. So I'll just do a very quick run through of all three of these options now. And the picking is going to make sure that you can't pick anything wrong, or that's the idea anyway. So if we have the mesh option selected, we can select an entire mesh face, and you can see that that surface has been created. We can choose to keep the mesh visible or hide it, whatever you wish, and change the tolerance. So that is the first option. That's not new. I just wanted to show it anyway. What is new is mesh and wireframe. What isn't new is the triangle, so let's show you that as well. So we could select this region of triangles here, and you can see we've fitted a plane, or a surface rather. We can remove the trimming, and we can add an extension if we wanted to. So that's doing by triangles. What is new for this release? Oh, I didn't apply that one. Let's go back and apply it. Yeah. What we can do is our mesh and wireframe. So if we select our mesh, we can now select any wireframe. So this wireframe has just been created by drawing curves on the mesh, nothing special. And here I've removed the trimming. I've still got that 2 mil or 3 mil extension on. So we can choose to hide the mesh. You can change the tolerance, make it tighter if you want. The smoother and better quality the mesh, the better surfaces you're going to get. So we've got a lot more control here when creating the surfaces we want to create. All right, so let's have a look at this top option. Again, we can hide that mesh. We can keep the trimming on in this case. And if you have a look, actually, those curves were just a rectangle. It wasn't even projected onto the mesh, but obviously the surface is projected down. All right, so the final example, I'm just going to select my mesh and select these curves. And again, you could remove the trimming or keep it and add extensions. And if you've got your extensions on, you can do your automatic trimming or whatever. So really, really nice, powerful tool there. A lot of work's gone into that, and it's a lot more user-friendly. We're almost there for reverse promise. Adapt to elements. Have a look at this. Okay. So here we've got a sheet metal part that was scanned and meshed inside Designer. And then we took the top skin off, so we're left with a mesh like this. So if we wanted to create a surface out of it directly, we'd need to tidy up these mesh borders. And now we can do that quite easily using the adapt to element command. So we could always adapt to elements and we could always extract circles, but we've now combined them in one powerful command. So if I select my mesh, I'm prompted to select my mesh borders. I can choose a circle. You can see that's automatically being fit. It's pulled the diameter out, so I can set that to be whatever I want, correct it, and I could apply that one. Let's go in and pull out another one. We could actually just create the wireframe element here instead. It's shown in blue, so I don't know how easy that is for you to see, but that's pulled out the wireframe element. We can change the diameter. Now you should be able to see it to be more accurate, and we can also adjust the center position. Say we want to round these values up. Yeah, and that's more accurate. So we can apply that. So with circles and all the other elements, we could also adapt the mesh and extract the wireframe elements. And change the reconstruction distance. That's here. So you can go bigger or smaller. That's the number of triangles and how far that spreads out. Okay, so let's have a little look at some other elements. We've got the option to pull out round slots. All right, we can adapt, we can do all the same things essentially, change the center point. We can do the same for square slots. And also for polygons. For the polygon, you want to make sure that you've got the correct number of sides. So I've got a 6-sided polygon in my model. And we can make it fit like so. All right, so now we have the option to tidy up our mesh. If you pull out circles, we have the option as well inside Edit Elements to then go ahead and adjust those center points. So let's say that needed to be 90 instead. You can use your up and down arrows to fix that, make it be what you want it to be. We can apply it and then use the Adapt to Element option using elements instead and say adapt to that wireframe element like so. So you can do it afterwards as well. So that means you can import wireframe from other systems, for example, or you can use wireframe that's been created from probing the physical part to tidy up that mesh rather than doing it all directly from the mesh. So my last one on this section is the improvements to fill gaps. So here's a part that I scanned, a physical part that I scanned using a hexagon arm at the Work and See Gunslingers last year now. Oh no, maybe it was this year. Maybe it was earlier this year. So I'm going to fill gaps, select my element to fill, and I'm going to choose to have flat with new vertices to fill this bottom hole. Because what we want to do is make this guy watertight, and then we'll be able to 3D print him. Then we can choose different filling methods. So I'll choose the convex filling. I can window select everything else, or I could just do select all from the ribbon at the top. And we can right click, and because we've made this a watertight model now, the command is automatically going to end that loop and close. So we've got one fragmented bit of mesh there. We can delete him, and then we're left with this guy. So we could use that, send it to a printer, and it would do the slicing for us. All right. Back to the PowerPoint, which is here. That was all my reverse engineering. I know there's a lot to take in there, and there's more information on the forum, of course. So moving over to analysis, we've got enhancements to the cost option module. We've added a brand new command called solid interference, and this is where you can detect intersections and coincident faces between solid bodies. Also on the draft analysis module, this was new for the last release. However, we've made a small enhancement that's very, very useful, is that you get your dynamic feedback as you hover your cursor over the part of the draft angle. So you can get the accurate draft angle and create labels from it. And then a small enhancement to a regular analysis command, which is just available outside of the analysis module. So I think it just comes as standard on the essential license, is the option to group adjacent faces to get the correct and accurate areas of faces. So this is a nice small section. We'll go into Designer and we'll open our next example. So solid interference. And I'm going to go to my analysis module. analysis tab. And then all of these commands here in this analysis panel, these are all our analysis module. So we can select the solid interference, which is our new one. I can select everything. All right, you can see we've got all them labels. You can choose to show them or not. It's up to you inside the command. And maybe you're only interested in intersections. You can show just those, or just the contact regions, which are shown in green. You can also choose by body and then toggle through. So the body that's being analysed is shown in blue. And at the moment, I'm just showing contacts, but you could show all. Then intersections are red, contacts green. Or you can do by selection and pick the body you're actually interested in and then toggle through any of those intersections or contacts if there are any. Okay, so that's the new solid interference command. Next, we'll just have a very quick look at the draft. So here we've got our part. Here's our draft analysis. So I'm going to select my entire model, actually, not just that face. So we'll go elements, select the entire thing. We've got fast preview on. I'm just going to change the number of ranges to be 6 and the max angle as well. So here we can see if we hover over the part, we have a problem with this face. We can create labels as we hover over, so this looks okay. But here we've got an underhang. So we can choose to create those labels, and they will be associative to those faces. So if we want to fix that draft, we could go to our solids tab, go to the draft, select the face that you want to fix or change, I should say. I'll pick Z as the draft direction and the pivot point to be this bottom corner. And now I've got the option here to change the draft angle. So I could have a draft angle of 0, or I could put a positive draft or the correct draft angle of 2 on there. And that's updated then in that label. So the next thing I want to do is show you the geometric properties, which is in the general analysis. So by default now this is on. This is a group of adjacent faces option. And so if you select a number of faces, just shift select a few like this, you automatically get the area and the perimeter of those faces. And obviously, if that's off, you get the information for each individual face. Okay, so that was a nice short section. Moving on, we've got our electrode enhancements. Okay, so we have the ability to create inspection points. Now, this is not an electrode-specific enhancement. This is licensed to the standard system license, and you can create inspection points on any bodies. We've created it specifically for the electrode, but it is not limited to electrode bodies. So we can now create, modify, and export inspection points in a number of different formats. I touched on the advanced customization license earlier when we talked about the macros and scripting. In addition to the scripting and what you've had recently, or up until now, sorry, for advanced customization, is the ability to do your custom themes and also configure dialogues to make custom commands. Previously, this was not available for the 2 electrode commands, extract tip and define electrode, but now it is enabled, so you can configure those commands as you like. And the final enhancement for Electrode is just a little tidy up of our EDM manager. We've removed some of the more general options that used to be in our right-click menu in the projects. When you right-click on projects, we've introduced a project tab and a parameters tab, and we've put those parameters available as checkboxes on the parameter tab, just to reduce the list and tidy up that EDM manager and the right-click menu. So I can go back over to Designer. I can open up my Electrode model. So just drag and drop that in. All right, so here you can see I've got my Electrode. I've already changed the visibility settings, transparency settings of locked elements, so you can see what I'm doing. Again, I'll just prove that it is an Electrode by going to my Electrode manager and doing a simulation. This is where we're doing our collision checking, does a simulation, and everything is okay. Here's our new project and parameter tabs. So these options have been removed from the right-click menu to make that menu a little bit more easy to digest. And what we've got here are our create, modify, and export inspection points commands, okay? And they're not limited to the Electrode module. We've added them here, but if you look on your wireframe tab, they are also there. So they live in two places on the ribbon. Obviously, if you haven't got the Electrode module, you will not see that tab. You won't see that tab at all. So I'm going to say I want to create. Let's go back to my layers and hide the workpiece because I need to create them on my Electrode. So if I create, I can choose my body to inspect. Because I'm working on an Electrode, it identifies that I'm not using the correct Electrode work plane. So it tells me or asks me, do I want to activate it? So that automatically deactivates the origin and activates the specific work plane assigned to that Electrode. So that's very important. And then if I do the regular isometric view, you can see how we get that orientation. So I can go ahead and start creating inspection points. We can create them around the model. We might want to have them all around and on the top face. So it's reasonably straightforward to do. When we accept, you can choose to show a probe path or not, or an order or not. You can change the order by using these arrows. Okay. And if we have the path shown, you'll be able to see how that changes as by moving those around. So we can add more points in, as we did. We have the option to show a sensor, and this does live collision checking or visible collision checking feedback. You can change the probing size and add more points like so. Of course, we can always delete any points we don't want. And we can create that inspection point group. So those inspection points don't look very good there. So what I'm going to do is show you that we can run the modify inspection points. We can select that group. Again, we have to activate the correct work plane. We can say, you know, actually those are all useless. Let's start again. So we'll have some inspection points on here. We might want some on this top face and over here, one on that face, one on that face, something like that. So that's accept. So at the minute, I'm just showing the order. We can show the path, how easy that is for you to see if I change the color. We can see we've got an approach distance here, which is here. We can make that bigger or smaller. And we've also got a security height. Again, you can make it higher bigger or smaller. So that's the modify. It's essentially the create, but create command user interface, but you're selecting the point set instead of the body. So because we have created that point set on an electrode body, when you go to your manager, your electrode manager, to then export your or save your project files, if you're saving them as a designer file, it's going to also save those those inspection points with that data file. So it's all linked together. You can also export the points to a specific format. You can select individual points or elements for the entire point set. This is a preview, and we have some different formats that you can pick. So we can choose the generic path. This would be the preview, or the inspection points. It's got this approach, security height, and then you can choose where you want to save that folder, save that file, and it will save as a text file. So that's saving your inspection points that you've created on your electrode. But as I said before, it is not limited to being used on the electrode, but it was designed to be used on the electrode. Oh, I just wanted to show you that you can also do the configure dialog. So if you have the advanced customization, you'll be able to run your commands, and this used to be grayed out in the last release. So if you configure your dialog to make my custom electrode, I'm just calling it something silly, we could save that. That is now my custom command. Obviously, I haven't changed anything here, and it shows up here. You could also add it as a command to the ribbon as well. Okay, moving on. Enhancements to modeling and surfacing. We've got a new command, so you can create rectangular pattern features. You get a light preview of the pattern when it fails, so you can see what the problem is. And this is licensed to the standard system license. We have a new sweep command for creating complex grooves. This is on the advanced system license for surfacing. And we also have the ability to split that groove surface into individual faces. This is a really nice, powerful new command. We've introduced control points when creating ruled surfaces, so you have a lot more control over your surface geometry or surface topology. And you can add multiple control points in and basically do what you need to do there. And the idea for this was to introduce it for the simplest surface, so we could then roll it out on more complex surfaces in the future. And the edit boundary command was new for about a year ago, I think, in the 2020.1 release. We've added dynamic sliders, which makes the command much quicker and more interactive to use. So I'll go back to Designer. And I will open up my next model. Create pattern. Okay, so here's my part. And I'm just going to go to my solids tab. We have the pattern panel, create pattern. I'm going to zoom in here and select my faces. I'm going to pick a first direction, which is this edge. Use the spacebar to get the right direction. I'm going to pick a second direction, which is this edge here. That's already in the right direction. And then I can use these sliders to pull out and snap to the wireframe that I've created. So I can increase the number like so. So here I'm using total length, but I could switch to spacing and set that to be 5, and then perhaps add 2 more of them in there. That's that, and that's using a whole feature or concave faces. Can also do the same with more boss type features. So this is using these parameters. And look, if we get operation not possible, you can see why. It's because they're all sat on top of one another. So let's say we just want to have 3 and 2, and then we can just dynamically change the distance. So we can pull that out, we get that preview. And you can see when we get a failure, what it looks like. And that'll be some sort of parasolid failure. We can have overlaps. We can pull more instances out. And create those boss features. Okay. All right, and those features are extruding all the way back down into the main body. That's our new create rectangular pattern feature. Here is our powerful new surfacing command. So in the past, to create this sort of surface, you would need to use the auto constrain command and window select all of your options like so, because you've got all of these nice curves giving you the shape that you need. So if you didn't have them, you wouldn't be able to get that nice curved shape. So if I just get rid of all those extra ones, now we can create that shape with much fewer curves, so with much less manual effort. We can create one nice section curve, and then we can do the sweep to drives. That's our brand new command on our surfaces tab, advanced only. We can pick the section curve, the first drive curve, and we see the result immediately. Okay, so we can choose to show the shading or not. We can also optionally choose a second drive curve. And we get our complex surface created in there. I'm going to go ahead and use a different curve now. Oh, I should have just undo that and bring out my second sweep curve. So it's so much easier to get the correct the groove shape. We can do section curve, first drive, and then we can do the second. And now we've got that sort of bulging shape all the way around those 2 drive curves. If we want to, we can split. Oh, I've lost him. We can split them up into multiple faces. So I'll just add a few split points in there to show you. We don't need to show the sections if we don't want to. And we can accept that. And you can see how I've created those individual faces doing that swept curve. I've got a really simple example to show you the control points on the ruled surface. But sometimes the simplest way is the best. So if I run my linear ruled, there he is, couldn't see him for a second, select my first curve and select my second curve. This is what we get by default. However, now we've got these labels, okay, and we can add new control points in. And then we can dynamically change shading with edges. Let's show our isometric in shading. It can make it easier to see. So we have full control of the curvature of that surface now. And we can add new ones in, and they'll always be created halfway between that guy and the next one. So we can pinch the surface together in places, add new ones in. We can delete ones that we don't want. A lot more control over the shape of our surfaces. And finally, for this section, and then we just have one more section, is the enhancements to the edit boundary. So it's really, really nice trimming tool. So this is only available on the advanced license. So it lives on here in the surface tab, and I can select my face to edit. I get all the edges highlighted. I can remove that edge. And then before, I would need to manually work out which direction I wanted to extend in, whereas now I can just pull it up dynamically, and that is so much easier. So using the trim elements, I can even select faces to trim to. And then obviously this guy needs to be all the way up there. And then we're trimming along that edge there. So if I select another face, I'll do the same thing. I'll remove that trimming, select that face, and I can pull the slider out. So I don't need to figure out which direction I'm going in. And we automatically trim to that face there. This is a really powerful command. That's why I'm sort of showing it again. So I can do the same to this edge here. What I'm going to do is heal this corner. And I can this time select these two faces. Yeah, and I'm going to trim all the way along here. Now we've got these base surfaces checked. I just want to uncheck those because these are cylindrical surfaces. We want to trim to the trimmed cylindrical surfaces, not the untrimmed, and we trim all the way up to there. I can right click. So now I need to trim this one to these guys. Yeah, so if I now removed all of that, I'd like to trim that surface to this surface. And we get a good result. All right, so we're trimming out this corner. Don't worry about this. I can select this top face and remove these edges here, and instead add these edges. So we can make sure it's gone all the way out if we wanted to, using these. So the dynamic sliders are what's new for this release. Now we're left with this corner where everything's trimmed to one another. We can go ahead and add a blend operation in there. And then let me just set that to default, and you can actually see all those unnecessary, unwanted surfaces have been removed now by that blend command. So I wanted to show it again just because it's a really powerful command, and I think it needs to be used all the time. Right, I'm on my last section, which is wireframe enhancements. We've now got the ability to create a 2D spiral from inside the helix command. If that was a request, we can just set some parameters to 0, and it creates a flat spiral. We have a new command, a new wireframe command, where we can create curves and polylines fitted through point sets or individual points. we've enhanced the extend command. So we've consolidated two commands here. The extend by length and extend direct have been removed and replaced with this one more powerful extend command. And we've also added the ability to extend multiple wireframe elements simultaneously. We can also extract wireframe axes from mesh bodies now, cylindrical mesh bodies, using the draw axes command, whereas before we couldn't do it for mesh as it had to be analytical surfaces. In the line tangent normal to element command, we have added faces as an environment filter, which means you can now create wireframe normal to faces wherever you select on your model. And I'm going straight into my annotations enhancements. We've got associative annotations to wireframe. We can now annotate 3D models which are not perfect bodies, so meshes, for example, and pull out the radius and center point from them. And we can create circular crosshair patterns on solid bodies and on circular wireframe drawings. So that's an enhancement to the crosshair command, the cross command. Okay, it's my final demo of the day. We'll go over to Designer, and I've got a couple more models. First of all, I'm going to show you the spiral. Okay, so I'm working on this layer, which is empty, so that's good. Inside the wireframe tab, I've got a helix command. I can select a key point, and I can go ahead and create a helix. So that's not new for this release. But I can also go ahead and create a spiral. And if I select my vertical pitch to be 0, I get a flat spiral, like so, 2D. So next, I wanted to show you the point interpolation. So here I've got some point sets, 2 different point sets. And on my wireframe tab again, underneath curves, we've got point interpolation. We can select our points. We can choose a start point. And we can choose to close that or leave it open. I'll do the same, but this time, rather than creating curves, which are smooth, I'll create a polyline so we have straight lines in between each one of those points. So we can also do this with the regular points. So if I just create a few points here, like so, we can run the point interpolation, Windows, select those points, choose a start point. At the minute, I've got polyline set. We can choose to have a curve. We can have an open curve. We can have closest point, shortest route. Looks like it's doing that anyway. So we've got some different options. And then you can choose the start and end conditions. So if you choose to have a closed curve, you might want to have tangency and the same tangency at the start and end. And you can choose the direction of that as well. So that's point interpolation. Next, we'll have a look at the new and enhanced extend wireframe option. So here, I'll just hide my work plane. Here we've got the hexagon logo, and I'm going to run my extend command. So we've just got one now, which is much nicer. You can see that we've got a multi-pick modifier, so we can select multiple elements. I'll just window select these guys, choose my extension side. We can do by length, which is the default, so we can pull those guys out or shorten them. If we go by direct, we go to the nearest element, nearest wireframe element, or we can choose to, and we can do both ends as well, or we can choose to limit elements and select elements that we want to, like so. Okay, so that's our new and enhanced extend command. Next, we're looking at our mesh axes. Here's my mesh model. I've meshed it. It's obviously the hexagon demo block. I meshed it using the convert to mesh command, which is available on the standard license. And if we go to our annotations, so we're moving on now from wireframe to annotations. If I go to my Note 3D, I can choose to, here we've got the message, I can choose to select 3 points. If I hold my control key down, and I can annotate these holes, these cylindrical holes. And so before that wasn't possible. And because we can't pick the edges, because the edges are all fragmented, so it would be the same problem with a poor quality IGES surface model. You would maybe struggle to pull out the arcs and get the radius. So now we can annotate these types of models and interrogate them and get the information that we might need. Okay. So that's the Note 3D. And then also we've got our mesh axes. So if we go to wireframe, oh sorry, I'm back on wireframe now. Should have done this one first. We've got our draw axis command. We can select faces, our cylindrical faces, and we're drawing those. Let's just make that orange so you can see it. We're drawing those axes now where we could not extract that before. So we can do that on multiple types of element. Like so. And we can also draw the circles and pull the points out as well. Yeah, so I think I'm on to my final demo, which is the associative dimensions to wireframe. All right, so what I've got here are some segments, an arc and an arc. So we can obviously make a change to our wireframe. Let's say we just move this point down, and that dimension is going to update. However, also, if we do a simple rotation, let's say on these elements here, and select a center point, we'll go up the Z-axis, and we can do a rotation angle on there. And you can see that those parameters, those annotations, have now updated, even though they are touching multiple elements. Okay, I think we're drawing to a close, guys. My final page, my penultimate page actually, is a summary. So to summarize the key points, because I know there was a lot of information in there, is we've got the Reverse Solution 2.0, which is a much more robust and more powerful reverse engineering solution. We have a brand new product that's been created for the metrology team and the metrology side of the business to sell either with an arm or alongside one of the inspection products, rather than sell a competitor piece of software such as Polyworks or Geomagic. We'd rather sell our own solution, seeing as we have one. We've introduced scripting, automation in the form of macros and scripting, where you can do record and playback of commands. I did a really quick demo on that just to show you what it was about, really. But if you want more detail on that, please join us for the tech brief next Friday. It will be shorter than this one, I can promise you. And also, just because we didn't want to make this one too long, so we can have a sheet metal expert showing you all the new functionality for sheet metal CAD, please join Piotr on the 25th for the sheet metal CAD tech brief, and he's going to cover not just the functionality in this release, but do a more complete overview for the last 2 releases. Okay, so thank you so much for attending. I appreciate it. Thanks for your questions.